Superintendents have been meeting for over 100 years. It's 70 years ago that the Police Superintendents Association was formulated, and actually what's quite interesting is that the original meeting that took place with the National Executive Committee at the time, the agenda items aren't too different from what we're dealing with now, particularly around paying conditions for our superintendents and their pensions, and also how they're looked after, their welfare and their well-being as well, which is something that is very much a priority for me over the next 3 years.
Superintendents have been around since the formation of the Metropolitan Police in 1829, but it wasn't until the early 20th century and around 1919 when the police actually went on strike. And as a result, the Police Federation were formed up to the rank of Chief Inspector. And of course, as you can imagine, superintendents at the time were, saying to the government, well, where's our representation? Where's our link with the government? And it wasn't until the following year in 1920 did the HMRC, as they were then, call a meeting of superintendents, and they elected their very first chair, which was a gentleman called Charles Dawson from Liverpool City Police, who was the very first president in role. And they played a role then on the police council that was formed to provide a relationship between the government and the police workforce over pay, pensions and conditions.
The role of the association was twofold in my view. It was first of all to provide a voice for senior officers in the police service to actually influence government and politicians and ministers and try and shape the way the law is going for the benefit of everybody. But it was also about looking after the membership.
It's very much all about looking after the interests of people who do really, really difficult jobs in challenging environments.
The priority for me is to make sure that my colleagues are properly remunerated in terms of their pay and conditions. And it's also important that they're properly trained, they're properly supported in their welfare and well-being.
I think I class myself as a stateswoman because you are literally meeting lots of people at a really senior level.
We had a very close working relationship with the Home Office. We had almost direct access to the then Home Secretary and the Policing Minister.
We'd actually really set a standard that was it made us worth listening to.
And I think we raised the ante in terms of the image of what the Police Superintendents Association was and what it stood for.
My proudest moment, I guess, when I was the National Secretary was negotiating the pay rise that came into effect in 2004, because we spent almost 2 years negotiating that particular rise, and it was a bit of a watershed really in terms of the pay of senior officers in the force.
Mental health, that was one of my priorities. And the government did implement a mental health review during the period of my time as president.
I gave this speech in front of Jack Straw, demanding that the rule of double jeopardy was a nonsense and it should be looked at again. It was important to keep the media pot boiling, as it were. If you want to change things, you've got to win the public over. The problem now, of course, is we've got social media, which gives a negative message quite often. We use the certainly traditional media to the nth degree, and it worked wonders. So I was very proud of that period.
The Home Secretary did ask me to conduct a national review of performance targets in policing during my final year, which I concluded. And she actually agreed with us that there was no place for targets in policing, and she encouraged police and crime commissioners who were in place by then and chief constables to remove targets from their policing plans.
We value diversity, and the PSA has come a long way in terms of recognising that and actually making sure more of our members are from diverse backgrounds.
We went to innumerable meetings with Tom Windsor and his team and thrashed out what became the new raft of police terms and conditions of service known as the Windsor Review.
We're in austerity, the cost of living, people haven't had a pay rise in a number of years.
There are colleagues retiring at the moment on the wrong pensions, which just cannot be right.
It's a tremendous responsibility, but it's also a tremendous privilege that your colleagues who are still doing the day job invest the trust in you.
I never, ever expected, as no one did, the global pandemic and the impact of COVID-19 and the way that we had to respond.
The Police Superintendents Association will continue to be a strong and influential voice for policing overall. And what I mean by that is developing ideas, helping government and senior leaders and developing policy and thinking around policing itself. But probably more importantly, being that strong influential voice, being the voice for superintendents and chief superintendents up and down the country.
We all joined the police whenever we did in order to make the public safe.
The people who join want to do the best thing for the public. They want to protect people. They want to be there to make a difference.
It's a real privilege to be in a role where we can have real influence, not just on supporting supers with their pay and conditions, which is really our priority, but also making a difference in policing and how we deliver policing to our communities.
You know, policing is changing and we need to adapt with it.